Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps. Maybe you're listening via that. Wait, I just said that. Maybe you're watching on Twitter at __ Jonathan Smith. If you want to follow me there as well, we're streaming the show there. If you want more from me, you can check out my other YouTube channel. My take is, now, I got a little carried away yesterday. I had a nice little over the hump day segment planned. I got caught up talking about, this upcoming NFL draft class and the quarterbacks and Jahad Campbell out of Alabama that I completely forgot to do my over the hump day segment yesterday. We usually do that on Wednesdays because it is hump day, but we're just going to do it today. We're over the hump anyway. Over the hump day on a Thursday does make at least a little bit of sense. So that's what we're going to get into. Over the hump day in honor of Mike Woodson's relentless pursuit of getting the Hoosiers over the hump over the last 4 years.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-woo! Hump day!
As a coach, I gotta get us over that hump. I gotta get them comfortable, knowing that you're gonna be in close games and you gotta make plays coming down the home stretch. I mean, in the tournament, we were right there. I just didn't get them over the hump, man. And that's something that I live with every day of my life. Because I truly believe that was the team to really make some noise and get to the finals, and I just couldn't get them over the hump.
Usually we do this on Wednesdays, but like I said, I got a little carried away yesterday talking about some of the quarterbacks in this upcoming draft class. But I want to talk about the Colts and can the Colts get over this 8-9 or 9-8 hump? Because that just kind of seems to be where they're at. Thanks, Josie. I like the music on this as well. If you want to comment on the show, head over to YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. You can subscribe and hop in the chat. So in the last 8 seasons under Chris Ballard, here have been the Colts records. 8-9 last year, 9-8 the year prior, 4-12, which gave us the great gift of Anthony Richardson. 9-8 the year before that, 11-5, 7-9, 10-6, and then 4-12 in his first year here. Chris Ballard's overall record after 8 seasons is 62-69. The Colts have won 47% of their games during the Chris Ballard tenure here in Indianapolis. How he still has a job, I, like you, have no idea. Barely under 500 over the last 8 years. A team that has been ridiculously mediocre. They went 8-9, 9-8, or 7-9, 4 out of the 8 years the Chris Ballard has been the general manager here in Indianapolis. How do they get over that hump? Now, the obvious answer is their quarterback play has to improve. Everyone knows that. That is the clear, obvious thing. If Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones comes out next year and they throw for 4,500 yards and, 33 touchdowns and only like 8 interceptions, then I promise you the Colts will not go 9-8 or 8-9. That will not happen. But other things have to improve as well, and you can win games with limited quarterbacks. The 49ers have been proving that with Brock Purdy for the last few years. The Eagles just won a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts, who is not limited, but he also doesn't belong on that upper echelon of quarterbacks in the NFL. The Lions with Jared Goff have won a whole bunch of games these past couple of years. So you can improve other things and win a lot of games, even if your quarterback isn't Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, or Josh Allen. Now, with that being said, if they'd gotten an average season from Anthony Richardson last year, the Colts probably would have gone 10-7, and they would have lost in the first round, which is not what we want. I want to win Super Bowls. I think I've made that pretty clear throughout my time on the air. And I will say, that I do think the Colts are moving in the correct direction to get out of mediocrity so far through this offseason, especially on the defensive side of the football. They've made a few moves. They let EJ Speed go, right? They're probably going to take a linebacker with the 14th pick. They fired Gus Bradley. They hired Lou Anarumo. That is a big upgrade over Gus Bradley. Cam Bynum and Charvarius Ward, those are both upgrades in the secondary. And hopefully some of these young pass rushers can come back better players. Vlayatu Latu comes back next year. He's a 12-sack guy. All of a sudden, this defense is going to look really good. If Kwity Paye comes back and he can be a double-digit sack guy, even though 8.5, puts you somewhere around 25th in the NFL on average, and that's kind of where Kwity Paye's been at these last 3 years. But if he can just take one more step, and then you got Kwity Paye on one side who's at, 9.5 sacks on the year. And then if you've got Vlayatu Latu on the other side who's at 12 sacks a year, and DeForest Buckner's getting older, so I don't expect him to be as dominant. But if he can just be solid there in the middle, then between Ward and Bynum and some of these young pass rushers improving, we could actually have a pretty solid defense in Indianapolis this season. So, to Chris Ballard's credit, I do think that the defense is moving in the correct direction to get the Colts out of this 9-8, 8-9 purgatory that they found themselves in 4 out of the 8 years that Chris Ballard has been the general manager here. My question is the offense. Because we talk about Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, if they were average, what would this team look like? Not very good, because they don't have enough playmakers on the offensive end or on the offensive side of the ball. Tight end by committee is very much in play once again for the Colts this season. They'll probably draft one because it's a deep tight end class, but it's not going to be Tyler Warren. Maybe it's Colston Loveland, even though a lot of people have a first-round grade on him, and I don't think that the Colts would take him at 14. I think they're going to take Jahad Campbell, a linebacker, because they really need one. And he should be on the board at 14. So then you end up, with like a Mason Taylor or a Harold Fannin Jr. in the second round. And you look at them, it's like, yeah, I think this guy is going to be good, but they aren't for sure things like Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren are. So I do think that tight end by committee is once again in the cards for the Colts. And then you look at the other pass catchers. I know Alec Pierce had a good year last year. Let's just be frank about this. Alec Pierce is a one-trick pony. The dude is fast, and he is big, and he is strong, and he just runs by guys, and he catches deep balls. That's really all that he did last year. Josh Downs primarily works, underneath routes, slants. He's a good route runner, quick, all that good stuff. I think he's got a little more to his game than what we've seen. I think he's a little limited in what he's allowed to do because of the quarterback situation here in Indianapolis. And then you've got, Michael Pittman Jr., a nice possession receiver. At a time in the football world where it's never been easier to find a great receiver, the Colts don't have one. They don't. And when you look at the other teams in the NFL that have limitations at the quarterback position, what do they all have? A really good wide receiver somewhere. The Vikings with Sam Darnold, they had Justin Jefferson. The Eagles have the combo of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. You look at the Lions, it's, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, and Sam Laporte is a really good young tight end. The Colts don't have anything even close to that. And this is why the development of Adonai Mitchell is crucial to the Indianapolis Colts being better next season. This is a guy who, I'm going to throw out a word that everyone loves. He has the tools to be an elite wide receiver. He runs a 4.3. All of those advanced stats say that he does a great job at getting open. He's a dude who can make plays at all three levels. He's a high-level talent. But that's the thing with the Indianapolis Colts. Fill-in-the-blank player has talent. He just has to produce. He just has to develop. And that's where we're at with a lot of these Chris Ballard draft picks. And Adonai Mitchell, for me, is at the top of the mind because if he develops and if he becomes a legitimate number one wide receiver, because as good of a player as Michael Pittman Jr. is, I think he's a great 2, not necessarily a 1. And if Adonai Mitchell can become that number one wide receiver, then watch out. This Colts offense would be better just because of that. Because then the Colts could rely on A.D. Mitchell to catch the football and run as opposed to catch the football and then throw it back across the field where it will inevitably be intercepted by the Denver Broncos and then ran in for a touchdown. If the Colts want to avoid hovering around that 500 mark again, yes, whoever plays quarterback for the Colts is going to have to be better than what Anthony Richardson was last year. But these younger players who have all this talent that Chris Ballard has gone out and drafted, at some point, those guys have to produce. It has to happen for them at some point. And the guys around Anthony Richardson have to be better than what they have been. He needs real weapons. Like the only one that the Colts really have is Jonathan Taylor, who's going to be, 26, 27. That's usually when you start to see running backs not named Derrick Henry deteriorate and just not play as well because they get older and they've taken 1,000,001 hits, and that's just, that's not very much fun either. The transfer portal is loaded right now. There's over 1,300, which is crazy. 1,300 college basketball players in the transfer portal as of right now. And Joe Jackson of Boiler in the Stands, he's going to join the show coming up at 11 o'clock. And we're going to talk about Camden Heide leaving. We're going to talk about Miles Colvin leaving. We're going to talk about the guys that are coming into Purdue, coming into Indiana, some other prospects. Then, of course, we're going to talk about the Final Four. I can't wait. It's going to be a blast. It's always good whenever Joe comes on because he's just a naturally smart dude who knows just a ton about college basketball. And it's good for me because I love college hoops. I can't wait for the Final Four on Saturday. I think it's going to be awesome. But I am much more of an NBA fan. I am. And Carmelo Anthony, it was announced yesterday that he is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And my generation loves Carmelo Anthony. He's part of that early regime of players that like I grew up watching and loved. I was never a big, Melo fan, but trust me, there are plenty of people, in their mid-20s who love Melo. And him getting into the Hall of Fame it's so important because he is the last of his kind. We will never see another basketball player in the NBA play the same way that Carmelo Anthony played. For his career, he averaged 22.5 points, 6 rebounds, 2.5 assists. Best year of his career came in 2012 with the Knicks. He averaged a little under 29 points, 7 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. Finished third in MVP voting that year, and he was named to the second team All-NBA team. Tough, pretty tough to be first team All-NBA when you're coming up with Braun. So he never won a title. He was still a great player. Yes, rings are important, but they aren't everything. And once again, his Hall of Fame enshrinement is incredibly important because we're never going to see a dude like him ever again. Prime Carmelo Anthony would not be allowed to play in today's game how he did, in that, 2012 season with the Knicks. Players don't isolate 15 feet from the bucket anymore. Players don't live on pull-up jump shots from 13 feet away. It's not what they do. They don't jab step 5 times and then go to work the same way that Carmelo Anthony would. And if you don't react to the jab step, he would go by you. And if you were small, he'd post you up and he'd hit that nice little fadeaway, turn it over his left shoulder. But that's not a thing anymore. And when players do that, it is few and far between. Like you'll see Pascal Siakam get opportunities to do that from time to time. But if you notice where he catches the ball, like he's in the paint. He's 10 feet away from the basket. I don't know if I miss it because, like I said, I was never really a Melo fan. But I do know that we'll never see it again. And basketball has reached this point that baseball is at, where there's probably too many analytics. Like baseball is undoubtedly working that way. Undoubtedly. In baseball, I could manage a team. Oh, the numbers tell me to do this. And then you just do it. That's how it is. Okay. Basketball, not quite to that point yet, but it's close. The numbers say you should take layups and threes. So players like Carmelo Anthony, a fantastic basketball player. You should have heard Coach Boeheim yesterday talking about him on Dan's show, which you can listen to from noon to 3. Players like Melo no longer exist, and it's sad because you hear basketball players say this, and I agree with it. Like, basketball is art. People fell in love with Michael Jordan because he owned that, 15 feet away from the bucket, that patented fadeaway, his ability to, leap in the air and do all sorts of crazy things. It was incredible. And we don't see stuff like that anymore. And it's kind of sad. And because, when Melo retired or when he was in Shrine yesterday, that was my first thought. I was like, geez, we're never going to see a basketball player play the same way that Carmelo Anthony did ever again. And in terms of winning, in terms of being efficient, which is what the NBA is really all about now, it's a good thing. But it does kind of suck because Melo was a lot of fun to watch. The night where, he goes for 50 on all the jump shots. Like, we're not going to see that because half of those shots came from the mid-range area. Okay. The dude could really shoot it. And we're never going to see another player like him. We will see more players like Cooper Flagg, though. It's just going to be quite some time before we do. The Final Four is quickly approaching, 2 days away, Saturday night. Can't wait. It's going to be a blast. And so often in basketball, the team with the best player wins. So who are the 10 best players in the Final Four? I'm going to tell you who they are when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt. Uh-oh.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. It's Thursday. 2 more sleeps. The Final Four is here. Joe Jackson joining me at 11 o'clock to talk about the Final Four. Also going to talk about Indiana and Purdue in the transfer portal. But before we do that, we're going to highlight the 10 best players in the Final Four. Okay, and we'll start at number 1. Number 1 is Cooper Flagg. I don't think there's any question about it. He's going to be the number 1 overall pick. No one's even trying to be different. That's how good he is. Sometimes, not all the time. This didn't happen with Wemby, but whenever a guy should clearly be the number 1 overall pick, you'll have these hot take artists be like, I don't know. What about this guy who's probably going to go 3rd? What about him? It's just nah, man. Don't be different. And Cooper Flagg is so good that no one's even doing that. No one. No one's out there saying, well, what about Ace Bailey? Hey, 6'10", he can shoot it. Kind of looks like Kevin Durant without the ability to handle the basketball the way that Kevin Durant did coming out of Texas. Cooper Flagg's so good that people aren't even messing with the idea of taking anyone else. I mean, he's the 3rd player ever to go into the Final Four leading his team in points, assists, and rebounds. He also leads them in steals, and he's also tied for the lead in blocks. He is good at everything. And part of why I like Duke to win the whole thing is because he's on their team. Duke is going to have the absolute best player in every single game that they play in. Right? He's going to be the best player in the game against Houston. He's going to be the best player in the game against Florida or Auburn, whoever they wind up playing against. He's the best player in the Final Four, and I can't wait to see him play against Houston because I got 3 guys on this list from Houston, one in particular that I'm very intrigued to see match up with Cooper Flagg. Number 2 on the list, Walter Clayton Jr. He's not the best player left, but he's the most entertaining. I don't have a doubt about that. This guy is just an elite shot maker. He's hit multiple big shots in the tournament already. The rebound, sprint to the 3-point line, do a 180, and hit a fadeaway 3 against Texas Tech to take the lead is one of the most insane shots you will see in basketball at any level whatsoever. The shot making is crazy. And with him, you just know that a 3-point barrage is going to come from him at some point. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when is this guy going to hit 3 out of 4 threes and just completely swing the game toward Florida. It happens every game. It does. And it's why he's the best point guard in all of college basketball. He's better than Braden Smith. I'm at a point where it's he is. He's really good out of the pick and roll, but you know what else he's really good at? Making tough shots and creating offense for himself. Love Braden Smith. But everything Braden Smith does is pretty ball screen dependent. Whereas Walter Clayton Jr. could be there's 4 seconds left on the shot clock. Fantastic. Let me just go to work really quickly and get a good shot that I and only I can make. Walter Clayton is the 2nd best player in the Final Four. Number 3, Janai Broome. Auburn forward, finally had a great game against Michigan State. Hadn't been great before that against Creighton. He only had 8 points. Against Michigan, he had 22 and 16, but he turned it over 5 times. He was 9 of 21 from the field. That's not very efficient. Against Michigan State, though, he had 25 and 14. Uber efficient, 10 of 13 from the field, 23 points, 14 rebounds, only turned it over twice. Right? He'd have gone for maybe 30 if he hadn't hurt his elbow the way that he did. But this was a guy who seemed like he was going to be player of the year for most of the year. He did. That is how good Johni Broome is. And Auburn having this luxury of, you know what? Offense is kind of stalling. Where's Broome? We're going to give him the ball on the block. And if you double him, he is an excellent passer. He passes the ball out of double teams so well. And look, he's the third best player in all of college basketball for a reason. And if he plays the way that he did against Michigan State, against Florida, and then Houston or Duke, then Auburn's going to win the whole thing. He just kind of took that game over, and he's more than capable of doing it again against the best teams in college basketball. Number 4, Kon Knippel. I love this dude. He's going to play in the NBA for a long time because he's a 6'7" point guard. He's a good passer. He can shoot the crap out of the basketball, shooting 40% from 3. And even though he's not a great athlete, he's so tall and long that he can survive on the defensive end of the floor. And we don't talk about him because he plays with Cooper Flagg, who's, once again, the consensus number 1 overall pick. But when Cooper Flagg missed a lot of that ACC tournament, Duke said, that's fine. Where is Kon at? And he ran the offense, and they just kind of waltzed their way through the ACC tournament. Kon Knippel was the ACC, MVP of that tournament, the ACC tournament MVP. There we go. He had 28 and 8 assists against Georgia Tech, 17 points against North Carolina. He hit 3 threes in that one. Then against Louisville, he goes for 18 points and 8 rebounds. He is a great player. And if Cooper Flagg wasn't there, then we'd be talking about Kon Knippel like he's a top 10 pick because that's what he is. He's the 4th best player at the Final Four. Number 5, Milos Uman. I don't know how you say it. I'm sorry. Houston guard. He's the creator for Houston, and he's their best player. Dude can just score it. Shooting 46% from the field, 45% from 3. And when people watch Houston, or when you look at the numbers, I think a lot of people would identify LJ Cryer as Houston's best player because he won a national title at Baylor, and he averages the most points for Houston. But LJ Cryer should because he's taken, 100 more shots than Uman has, and they've both played 38 games this year. If you take more shots, you should score more points. But Uman, he's the better creator, a more willing passer. He leads Houston in assists. He's also bigger, and he's also a more versatile defender than Cryer. So I think Uman is the best player for Houston. The 2nd best player and the 6th best player at the Final Four is LJ Cryer, a guy that we've seen do it on the biggest stage before. As I said, he's won a national title. He won one at Baylor. He hasn't been the most efficient player in the world this season, but he's still just an excellent shooter. Okay, he only shoots 41% from the floor overall, but dude shooting 42% from 3. Okay, the offense inside the arc, though, not great. Okay, he doesn't really create for his teammates, only averaging 2 assists per game. He's 6'1". He's a little small, which kind of limits him on the defensive end. But when he gets going, like he did against Gonzaga, good luck beating this Houston team because, as we all know, they guard as well as anyone in all of college basketball. The number 1 ranked defense in the country, according to KenPom, will be taking on the number 1 offense in the country, according to KenPom, when they play Duke on Saturday. Can't wait for that game. It's going to be fantastic. The 7th best player in this Final Four is Will Richard, Florida guard. He struggled against Texas Tech, but was very important in the wins over UConn and Maryland. This is kind of who he is, though. He's a little up and down. He'll have big games where he goes for 30, and then he'll turn around in the next one and score 6 points like he did against Texas Tech. He was consistently good in the SEC tournament, and that's why Florida rolled through it the way that they did. Because when Will Richard is making shots, Florida is near impossible to beat. He's a senior. He's gotten better every year of his career. And when he's Florida's 2nd best player, when he's playing like that, then Florida looks like the best team in all of college basketball. Number 8 is Tahad Pettiford, Auburn freshman guard. He's Auburn's Will Richard. When he's Auburn's 2nd best player, like he has been in a couple of games throughout this NCAA tournament, Auburn looks like the best team in all of college basketball. He's a really good athlete. Dude's fearless. He's like, oh, this scrub is guarding me. And he's just like, let me go to work. And he's going to, get to the rim and just go at dudes. And I love watching him play because there's just this fire and there's this intensity on both ends of the floor. And he's, like I said, he's fearless. He will take big shots. He hit a couple of them against Creighton. His play is a large reason why they're in the Final Four. Came up big in that game against Creighton. He was excellent against Michigan. Wasn't as impactful against Michigan State, but when Janai Broome goes for 23 points on 10 of 13 shooting, then you're probably going to win if you're Auburn. Also, the closest game that Auburn's played all tournament was against Michigan State, the game where Todd Pettiford struggled a little bit. And if they want to beat Florida and then Duke or Houston, whoever they wind up playing, Todd Pettiford has to be awesome because when he is, man, Auburn just goes to another level that is really tough to compete at. Number 9, another name that I'm going to butcher, Kaman Maluwak. Hope I said that correctly. He's a big 7'2" center who is incredibly athletic. And, I mean, he's going to anchor an NBA defense at some point in his life and be very good at it. He's the best defensive anchor in all of college basketball. He blocks shots. He rebounds. He finishes well around the rim on the offensive end. Because he's so big, he sets really good screens. It's really hard to not like him on both ends of the floor. But my favorite thing about him is his ability to move his feet. When you watch college basketball, teams don't switch very often when it's, like a big and a small running a screen and roll, because bigs in college basketball just don't have the foot speed to stay in front of these guards. Maluwak does. He'll have these possessions. He's this big 7'2" guy out there on the perimeter, and he'll just stay in front of some little jittery 6'2" guard. Now, he obviously does get beat from time to time because he's 7'2", and 7'2" guys are just not as quick as 6'3" guards. Like they just aren't. But when he's out there on the perimeter guarding someone smaller than him, like I don't freak out like, oh crap, like this is going to go badly. The same way that I do with some other really good bigs across the country. Kaman Maluwak and his defensive prowess earns him a spot as one of the top 10 players in the Final Four. Last guy on the list, another defensive player, Joseph Tugler. Never thought I would put a guy who only averages 5.5 points per game on a list of the 10 best players in the Final Four. But when you are the best defensive player on the best defense in the country, according to KenPom, then you have to be on the list. And Tugler's probably going to draw the assignment of having to try to stop Cooper Flagg. And I can't wait. It's going to be fascinating to see how, Tugler tries to defend Flagg and how Flagg tries to break down Tugler, and like how is Duke going to use, Cooper Flagg as an on-ball screener, because what Joseph Tugler does, as well as anyone in the country, is just obliterate screens. Like if you're running a screen and roll and he is involved, he is going to make your life very, very hard. And it's fun to watch. Can't wait to watch that matchup on Saturday night when Duke plays Houston. Those are your 10 best players in the Final Four. When we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, Camden Heide is leaving Purdue. And I was surprised by it. And obviously, this is a real problem for Purdue. Like Miles Colvin, very replaceable, not upset by that at all. Camden Heide leaving, though, is problematic for Purdue. I'll tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Tickets, Twitter, __ Jonathan Smith. Maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. You can also listen to the Dan Dockett Show from noon to 3 there as well. You can hear me chiming in there. And if you want even more from me, you can go check out My Take Is on YouTube, where I do a little bit more stuff. And it's really good. You should go and check it out. Anyway, Camden Heide is leaving Purdue. We're going to have Joe Jackson of Boiler in the Stands and of the Feed the Post Substack and YouTube channel join coming up here in about 20 minutes to talk about not only Heide leaving, but also Colvin and Oscar Clough and the different guys coming in. We're going to talk about the Indiana commits that they got yesterday as well. It's going to be good. Joe does an excellent job. Trust me, you're going to want to hear everything that he has to say about this. But here are kind of my thoughts on Camden Heide leaving. It's surprising, for one, and not good at all for Purdue. When it came to Miles Colvin leaving, I didn't think they were losing much. Miles Colvin is incredibly replaceable. It is not hard to find 6'4" guards who are athletic and shoot 31% from three. Not hard to find them. Throw in the fact that Miles Colvin couldn't break guys down off the dribble and go get a bucket. Oh, you can find those dudes everywhere. Not hard. Camden Heide, however, is much tougher to replace. Okay, a 6'7" wing who's athletic, can really shoot the basketball, came on really late in the season, ended up shooting 39% from three, and most importantly, has produced in March in big spots. Like, that is a real loss for Purdue. And it's also much harder to find. And if you do find an athletic 6'7" wing who can shoot 39% from three, I promise you will not be the only team pursuing that player. And that is an absolute promise in every way, shape, and form. Also, with Miles Colvin leaving, like, you have other guards that are going to fill in behind him. CJ Cox and Jakari Harris can easily slide into that role that Miles Colvin played for them this last season. Purdue doesn't have anyone behind Camden Heide with the same size and skill set. Purdue doesn't have another 6'7" athletic wing on the roster. No one. His numbers, Heide's, weren't eye-popping this year. He had some struggles, but he did shoot 39% from three. And I think everyone who has seen Purdue play has seen the impact that he is capable of having on the game whenever he gets in there. Okay, he's got legitimate size at 6'7". He is legitimately athletic. Okay, he brings size and athleticism that Purdue doesn't have on their roster. He's one of three guys from Purdue's roster last year that was listed at 6'6", 6'7", or 6'8". Of those three guys, he was the only one who actually played real minutes. Purdue now has a legitimate hole that they have to fill. Because if you want to go on a Final Four run, at some point you're going to play a team with a big wing who can score the basketball. That's the reality of it. So right now, Purdue, they don't have anyone who can guard a big wing like that. And hopefully, they're able to find someone in the portal who can, and hopefully the Pacers can continue to roll the way that they have been here as of late. They win last night. They beat the Charlotte Hornets. Tyrese Halliburton with another just a very impressive game. The Pacers are now 22-3 when Tyrese Halliburton scores 20 points or more. Last night, 22 points, 10 assists, and the run of high assist numbers and low turnover numbers continue. 10 assists and 0 turnovers for Tyrese Halliburton. I read a thing the other day or last night. He's got like 133 assists since March 1st with only 15 turnovers. A third of those turnovers, by the way, came in one game. And what we saw from Tyrese Halliburton last night was the perfect Tyrese Halliburton game. Scored the ball from all over the floor. All over the floor. That when he does that, man, like it makes me smile because he is a legitimate 3-level scorer. Like that is something that he can be. And last night, he shoots 4 of 6 on his threes. He hit 1 of 4 on his mid-range jumpers, which is abnormal for him. He's usually very good from 12 to 17 feet. He was also 4 of 5 on his paint shots. That is a great game from him. Scoring at all 3 levels, breaking the paint often, finding open shooters, spreading the ball around, being efficient in his shooting. That is peak Tyrese Halliburton. If you get that Tyrese Halliburton for an entire series, he could be the best player in that series. Seriously. The issue with Tyrese Halliburton and why, if the Pacers wind up playing the Pistons and if they end up, advancing and playing, the Cavaliers, the reason why I would struggle to think that he could be the best player in a series is because like the version of him that we saw last night isn't consistently what you see from him. He'll have these long stretches where he disappears and he'll score, 5 points in 3 quarters, and you can't have that if you want to be the best player in a series, which is very important to have in the NBA. And because he broke the paint as many times as he did last night, he got his teammates involved. Okay? I mean, he's just an incredible player. And once again, we saw the best version of him last night. And if he continues to play like this, if he continues to be on this tear where he has, 133 assists to 15 turnovers like he's had in the last month, that is, an almost 9-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. If this continues, then he will be an all-NBA selection for the second year in a row. He was named, third-team all-NBA last year, and he's got a pretty great chance to be third-team all-NBA this year, given the surge that we've seen him have after the All-Star break. In terms of the game itself, I was very pleased. Pacers played a bad Hornets team that was banged up. I did air quotes for those who were just listening because, it's late in the season. Teams that want, the best chance at the number 1 overall pick, they have guys that are getting sick and are tweaking their ankles and all sorts of stuff. So the Hornets had a bunch of guys out last night. And usually when you see that, you think, the Pacers should roll. No, that is not what the Pacers do. When the other team is incredibly injured, the Pacers usually play worse. Throw in the fact that, the Hornets are bad, and all of a sudden it's just like, oh no, what are they going to do? Okay, but last night the Pacers showed up and they took care of business. There were times where the game was close, but it never felt like the Hornets really had much of a chance. Like the Pacers controlled the game the whole way through. They weren't great offensively. They missed a lot of open shots, but defensively, they were really good. They held the Hornets to, 105 points. They forced 18 turnovers. That's impressive. NBA teams do not turn the basketball over 18 times in one game. And once again, I know that the Hornets sat a whole bunch of guys because they're tanking. But with that being said, it hasn't stopped the Pacers from losing to bad teams in the past. It's ridiculous that I even had to worry about that game last night. But given the history of the Pacers these last 2 seasons, you kind of have to, because you just don't know what version of them you're going to get. The Pacers have officially clinched a playoff berth, by the way, and they are just moving closer and closer to clinching that 4th seed to have home court advantage in the first round. They currently have a 3-game lead over the Pistons, who are the 5th seed, and they have a 3.5-game lead over the Milwaukee Bucks. The Pistons lost last night playing on the road against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Cade Cunningham still not back quite yet. The Bucks play tonight, 7 o'clock against the 76ers. They should win that game even with no Damian Lillard. Giannis probably going to score 50 because he's just that kind of a dude. And we'll kind of see how it goes from there. Looking ahead to the Pacers' next game, they're going to play tomorrow night. They're going to host Utah, another team that's tanking, another game that the Pacers should 1,000% absolutely win, especially if Jarris Walker keeps playing well. I'm trying so hard not to get my hopes up. Jarris Walker has put together back-to-back impressive games. He's playing more this small ball lineup with him and Obi Toppin on the floor together. It's a good lineup for the Pacers. Like, they are successful when they put those two guys in together and they go small. Specifically that Siakam, Jarris Walker, and Obi Toppin lineup where they've got like three guys that are, 6'8" or 6'9", no real center, but you're still big because you have three guys that are all power forwards playing on the floor together. You throw in the athleticism and length of Obi Toppin and Jarris Walker, then you can hold your own on the glass. And once again, I'm trying not to get my hopes up, but man, Jarris Walker's looked good here as of late. He's back in the rotation firmly. He played more minutes off the bench last night than any other Pacer. He also led the Pacers in plus minus. He was plus 22, meaning the Pacers were -8 when he was not on the floor. And that's impressive for a guy who's had to battle through some bad stretches this season, a guy who actually played so bad at one point that they took him out of the rotation. And if he keeps playing like this, he's going to be a rotational player for the Pacers, not just next year, but in the playoffs. Because he's a big dude who can rebound the crap out of the ball when he wants to. He had six rebounds in 22 minutes last night. The dude can guard. Is he, an elite wing defender quite yet? No, he's not. But he can guard the second best player on the opponent's team. And when you have a guy in Andrew Nembhard who's, 6'5", that's fine. Let Jarris Walker guard whoever the second best offensive player is on the opposing team. Okay, and then you throw in the fact that Jarris Walker is shooting 39% from three on the season. When you have 6'8" guys that are athletic, can defend, rebound, and shoot 39% from three, then you usually play those guys. You do. Like, that's just, kind of common sense at this point. And we're starting to kind of see what the vision was for Jarris Walker when he originally got drafted. He was the 8th overall pick. And if you're the 8th overall pick in the NFL, then you're kind of expected to become a stud. If you're the 8th overall pick in the NBA, that is not my expectation for you. Sure, from time to time, you'll have guys like Paul George, who the Pacers took 8th overall, blossom into these great players. But most of the legitimate stars in the NBA are picked 1st, 2nd, 3rd, maybe 4th overall. Like, after you get out of that range, you're hoping to draft a really good role player. And that is what we're starting to see Jarris Walker turn into. Okay, he was never supposed to be a guy who wins MVPs, and he's not going to be that. He's supposed to be a big wing defender who can make open threes and attack closeouts. That's what he's done. He's got a little more to his game that I don't think we've really had a chance to see yet. Like, he can really handle the ball. He's got really good vision. The issue is, the passing accuracy, not always there, but like, you can see the gears turning more and more here as of late. And he's done those things. He's defended. He's made open threes. He has attacked closeouts. He's been smart. And he's turned into a real contributor for the Pacers here over these last few wins. I hope he keeps getting better because I really liked him coming out of Houston as just a big wing defender who can also do some things for you on the offensive end. He had a really tough, he crossed over, went between his legs, and took a step back three, hand in his face, super tough shot. And he hit it. Like, he has some stuff to his offensive game as well that we just haven't been able to really see yet because he hasn't been on the floor. And it's because, the defense hasn't been there like it's needed to. He's had some lapses and those types of things, but he's figuring it out, which is really encouraging. It's always fun to see young players improve and get better throughout the course of a season. We've seen that from Jarris Walker over the course of the year. He's just kept at it. He's kept getting better, and it's fun to see young guys get rewarded as they improve their games. Speaking of young guys, there's less and less of them in college basketball. Joe Jackson from Boiler in the Stands, also from the Feed the Post Substack and Feed the Post YouTube channel. He's set to join the show coming up at 11 o'clock. We'll talk about Purdue, guys leaving, Oscar Clough coming in. We'll talk about Connor Enright to Indiana, all that good stuff when we come back with Joe Jackson here in about 5 minutes.
do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, over at Indy Sports Tickets. Maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. You can also watch the show over on YouTube, _ Jonathan Smith, if you want to follow me there. And if that's not enough for you, I got another YouTube page called My Take Is that you can check out as well. Joined now by the one and only Joe Jackson from Boiler in the Stands. Also has a Substack called Feed the Post, where he writes excellent stuff. Also has a YouTube channel called Feed the Post, where he posts excellent things as well. He had a video come out about 2 weeks ago, kind of helping break down every team in the NCAA tournament. I watched it. It was really good. Joe, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing good. Appreciate that intro.
Of course, man. You got it. We only have smart people on the show, Joe, and you were definitely that. And I want to start with just your thoughts on Miles Colvin and Cam Heide leaving.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's your core. You want your guys to stay, and you want the continuity and all that. But and like, it's going to be sad to see them go. But at the same time, right, it's not like, and I don't mean this in a bad way by any means, but it's not like they're irreplaceable. Like, you can go find guys that have similar skill sets that can do their thing. And right, they both started playing much better towards the end of the season, but for the first 3-4 months of the season, it was not working out great. And so I do understand both of them kind of just wanting a fresh start over and kind of figure it out from there. So yeah, like, obviously it stinks that they are going to leave, but at the same time, it's just one of those things. It happens, and you kind of move on and then figure out how to piece it together from there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, when Miles Colvin left, I was like, that's fine. Like, I think it's easy to find 6'4" guards who are athletic, and like, Miles Colvin's jump shot looks good, but he only hit like 31% of his threes this year. Really, outside of the game against Ole Miss, where he went for 22, he kind of felt a little underwhelming this year in terms of his performance. For me, though, I feel like Cam Heide leaving is a much bigger blow, just because Purdue doesn't have a ton of 6'7" wings who shoot 39% from three on their team. Would you agree that Cam Heide's probably a bigger loss than Miles Colvin?
Yeah, I definitely would. For the reasons you said, just the size that he has, the ability to, defend threes, defend fours. He shot the ball really well. And he shot 39% from three, and that was with I don't have the exact numbers, but it felt like a month where he missed, or where he made like 1 3 total, and he still ends up shooting 39% from three on the year. So no, I think he is the bigger blow. Like, again, I think you can go and try to find guys to replace, but yeah, a little bit harder to find 6'7" dudes that do that.
Joined by Joe Jackson from Boiler in the Stands and the Feed the Post Substack and YouTube channel. So Oscar Clough is this big, 6'11" guy who's transferring in to Purdue from South Dakota State. And like, the numbers look awesome. I am very curious your thoughts. Like, how does he fit alongside Trey Kaufman-Wren and Jacobson, who should be back this next season?
Yeah, I mean, Clough, first thing is just he's going to rebound the ball. And right, that was not that Purdue was awful at it, but they definitely weren't up to their standards in the rebounding category. He was, I think, the second most rebounds per game, and maybe just the straight up best rebounder in the entire country last year. So that'll be just a nice fit, offensive glass, defensive glass. But how he fits, right, is when he's in with TKR, I would expect him to run a lot of what Caleb Furst did, of just kind of hanging out in the dunker spot, maybe catch some lobs. He'll still set some screens and roll. But he's also a guy that they can dump the ball down into the post. And like, I don't know, I think through, and realistically, especially in that if he does start, right, realistically, he's the fourth option offensively at best. And obviously he's a guy that's shown he can be an engine offensively. So there's that part when if it's him and Jacobson in, right, now it's a little bit more where it fits, where Jacobson can be kind of this pick and pop big in theory. And Clough can be a guy you can, dump the ball down into the post. He has good passing from there too. So I think offensively it's going to work, right? Like when you have Braden and TKR, two of the most skilled players probably in the country, and then you got a guy in Clough who just seems like a workhorse ready to do his job. The spacing maybe at times it'll take maybe a little bit of time, I think, to figure out the nuances of kind of the spacing in that, but I have no doubt that they're going to figure it out.
Do you think Mike Whitson's going to watch Purdue play next year and take notes on how to run an offense with two bigs on the floor together?
I mean, he might do that. Who knows?
Sorry, I make myself laugh probably way too often, Joe. I am curious though. I thought, in addition to the rebounding, like you said, Purdue wasn't a great rebounding team, but they held their own. I thought their biggest issue on the defensive side of the ball, though, was the lack of rim protection. Does Oster Clough, he's a big guy, like does he provide the rim protection that Purdue kind of missed this past season?
Yeah, for sure. And I do think kind of the way I viewed Clough, and I could be 1,000% wrong about this because as I brought up on some of the Boilers and the Stand shows and stuff, 2 years ago when Lance Jones transferred, I was like, okay, cool. He'll be like a solid 15-minute per game backup. And, he ended up being a 34-minute per game, crazy important player. All that to say, how I view Clough is I think he raises the floor of this Purdue team of like, okay, he fills a lot of those gaps of he's going to rebound. He's a solid rim protector. He isn't like an elite shot blocker per se, but his value came more from just like he does a good job walling up at the rim. He forces teams to take tougher shots, and like he can play that drop coverage against pick and roll that Purdue at their core I think wants to play. So he kind of provides that floor of just like in my head at worst he's a 15 to 20 minute per game big that can provide you a lot of those things while also still being a good free throw shooter, can post up, good passer. And so, right, like he can do a little bit of all of these things that they need while also being elite rebounding. And then Jacobson to me is one of the more of like, he can kind of really raise the ceiling of the team of, if Jacobson works out like many are expecting him to, he's this stretch 5, 7'4" big that also is like an elite shot blocker. So I think the combo between getting Jacobson back and Clough, like it should cover up a lot of the holes in terms of protecting the rim, in my opinion.
Joined by Joe Jackson of the Boiler in the Stands podcast and the Feed the Post Substack and YouTube channel. What else are you going to be looking for Purdue to add in the portal this offseason?
Yeah, so I mean, right now they're at 10 roster spots, and for anybody that isn't aware, the offseason change this year means that there's now 15 total spots, regardless of walk-on, scholarship, whatever. You get 15 players on your roster. So in theory, Purdue has 5 spots to work with. I would expect them to use 2 to 3 and then probably keep 2-ish walk-ons, would just be my guess. This is also working under the assumption that like Smith, Warrior, TKR and back. I don't think we've explicitly seen that, but I would be shocked if they left.
I would ask.
They need.
Go ahead. Go. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think they need some sort of backup 4 behind TKR. And right, Burgess in theory could maybe do it. I think so. You look at this team, and this is a championship level team, and so I think you've got to go all in. So a stretch 4, like that's where kind of like a Cam Heide, maybe a little bit bigger. So him, I would say a stretch 4, and then a wing for sure, a wing that can defend, knock down some threes, maybe handle the ball a bit, but big emphasis on defense there. I think those are the 2 absolute needs, right? Like absolutely need a wing, absolutely need a backup 4. And then if I'm getting greedy, I wouldn't mind seeing a second kind of maybe a little bit smaller wing, but another wing of sorts.
What about another ball handler, or do you just kind of expect for CJ Cox or Jakari Harris to grow in that role?
I expect them to grow in that role. I guess with the wings that I mentioned, I wouldn't hate. They don't need to be a primary ball handler, but if somebody that can just kind of bail Purdue out, bring the ball up and create a little bit would be nice. That's where, like, I guess if I'm going back to what I want to see Purdue do, it's a stretch 4. it's a defensive-minded wing, and then it's a wing that can do that can kind of handle the ball and be a secondary ball handler.
That all makes sense. That's kind of how I feel as well, especially having or finding a wing who can really defend, because at some point, like, you're going to run into a team like, maybe not like Duke, because this Duke team's insane this year, but you're going to run into a team that has, a big wing who can really score, and you're going to need obviously a wing for that game. I would ask you the same question about IU's needs in the portal, but the answer is everything, because they only have, two guys on that roster right now. But they did sign Connor Enright to Indiana yesterday. That transfer from DePaul. You put out a really good video about him on Twitter. What are kind of your thoughts on him? What all does he bring to IU?
Yeah, I mean, he's a really good passer, a really good facilitator. He's familiar with DeVries, just from their time at Drake 2 years ago together. And so I think I don't know if you want him being this surefire starting point guard. Maybe he earns it and I can do that. But no, he is a solid pickup. He can facilitate the ball. He was 15th in the country in assist rate. Had a little bit of issues with turnovers. Didn't shoot the three great last year, although he shot, I believe, he was 32% on the year, but I believe he was 42% on catch and shoot threes instead of just pull up threes. So he has a little bit of that scoring ability, and he's just a guy that he's going to be a senior. He's been experienced. Right, you're not gonna you can't pass up getting a guy like that, even if he is a backup point guard. That is a very, very good backup point guard to have.
Joined by Joe Jackson from the Boiler in the Stands podcast. You can also check out his Substack, Feed the Post, and his YouTube channel, Feed the Post. What do you kind of expect from Indiana in year one of the Coach DeVries era?
Yeah, I mean, a little hard to say right now, just given, as you said, they have three guys now officially on their roster, DeVries, Enright, and Sisley. But yeah, I mean, from everything I've seen, and I'll dive deeper into DeVries and kind of what he did at West Virginia and Drake and stuff like that this summer. But everything I've heard is positive. Everything I've heard is the dude can coach, the dude can recruit. And when you combine those things with IU's budget, with IU's just, notoriety, good things are going to happen. I don't know if it's fair to be has to be, a 6 seed or something like that this year. I would expect the goal is just probably to make the tournament and just show the signs of building something. But at the same time, Tucker DeVries is good. I'm high on Trent Sisley. I know that we can't talk much about their roster, but they already have a couple good pieces. It's not unfathomable to think that IU puts together another solid roster that maybe competes in the top third of the Big Ten and slides in as a 7 seed or 8 seed or something like that in the tournament.
I'm with you. If they made the tournament next year, that would show growth, and that I think is really what IU fans want right now. Speaking of the tournament, we have the Final Four on Saturday. I'm so excited, and I'm curious your thoughts. Who do you think is the best player in the Final Four, not named Cooper Flagg, Walter Clayton, or Janai Broome?
Oh, that's a good question, then. It might Knipple and Uzan probably were the two that popped into my head immediately. I'm gonna go Uzan just because I think he can do a bit of everything for Houston, but and it's really just really, really important for what they do. But yes, I'm gonna go him, but that is a tough one.
I went Knipple, and I had Usman as the fifth best player, and I kind of want to focus on Duke because I think they're the best team left. I think Duke is so good roster wise that even without Cooper Flagg, they would have made the Final Four. Is the roster that good, or do they really need him to kind of put them over the top?
I think they would need him to win the whole thing, just given especially how this Final Four played out, where, these are 4 just elite teams across the board. But I'm with you. The roster, the roster is so good. There really isn't a hole basically anywhere. Like Malawach is awesome. We both talked about Knippel. Tyrese Proctor and Sion James have even been great. You get good role players. Like it's just across the board, and they are the tallest team in the country. They have really nobody under 6'5" that they play. They all can shoot the ball. They force a ton of mid-range shots defensively. They crash the glass. Like you just go up and down, and it's just like, all right, what hole can we poke in this team? And I don't think there is one. Like I think, especially if Duke wins it all, I think we will look back at this Duke team and be like, oh, that was like one of the, I don't know, 3 best teams we've seen since 2000, something like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Joined by Joe Jackson from Boiler in the Stands and the Feed the Post Substack and YouTube channel. I'm with you entirely. Like they're just loaded with talent. I mean, when you hold Alabama to 65 points, I think that speaks to how great the defense is from Duke, and they had the number 1 rated offense this year according to KenPom, and it's because they just got, like you said, like there is no hole, and I think they're playing better just through the tournament than any other team in the Final Four. Who do you think's playing the best right now of those 4 teams?
I mean, I think the team playing the best is for sure Duke, and right, they're just. We could just keep talking about how good they are, because that truly is how good they are. But Duke is number 1, and then I don't know, but for number 2, and it would be one of Florida or Auburn. I think there's cases for both. But even Houston, right? They're not a team anybody wants to play, and their defense can be suffocating. So they're all good, obviously, but I would just go Duke is the best.
Last thing for you, Joe, and I will let you go. Who do you have winning these games on Saturday, and who do you have winning the whole thing?
Duke, I think, beats Houston. I don't think Houston gets blown out. I do think it's a game where Duke probably is fairly comfortable the whole game, though. And then as long as Janai Broome is healthy, I'm going to take Auburn. I haven't seen any indication that he won't play or anything like that. And I do think it would take a big Janai Broome game for Auburn to win. But I also I don't necessarily love Florida's matchups against him, so I'll go with Auburn. And then I would have Duke beating Auburn in the championship.
Does Auburn's loss to Florida earlier in the year, I guess, how does that play into your thought process about the game?
I don't know if there is a ton. Obviously, right, you'd rather have already beat them, and just kind of going back through, it wasn't a great Janai Broome game. Auburn didn't shoot the ball well from 3. So there are definitely, it looks like there are probably some pretty easy things to clean up. I also think, right, Auburn's, I think, gotten back on track, and they had that little bit of an area where it's just all right, a few losses in a row and things like that. But it seems like they've gotten back on track from there. But also, I mean, Florida's just been so good this whole year. So I'm very excited for that one. I think it should be a really good game.
Me too. I'm pumped up for it. And you said you had Duke beating Auburn?
Yes.
Yeah. That's I don't know. That, like you said, that Florida Auburn game is going to be great. And I'm with you. I do have Duke winning the whole thing. Joe, thanks for your time, man. You were great as always. As the portal stuff continues, I'm sure I'll reach out again to have you on. I always appreciate it when you make the time, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. Appreciate you having me on.
See you. That is Joe Jackson. You can check him out on Twitter at Joe Jackson CBB. You can check him out on YouTube, Feed the Post, Substack, Feed the Post, and the Boiler in the Stands podcast, where he covers all things Purdue. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, we missed Over the Hump Day yesterday. I had something planned, got a little caught up talking NFL draft stuff. So when we come back, we're going to hit Over the Hump Day, talking about the Colts' mediocrity and how they kind of get out of that.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket. 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Big thanks to Joe Jackson for joining the show in that last segment, talking about just Purdue's future, what they're doing in the portal, the Final Four, all that good stuff. But we've got other things to talk about. We got to talk about the Colts, because the draft is 3 weeks away from today, which is awesome. We love the draft. We love talking about who the Colts are going to take. Jahad Campbell, probably, because the Colts continue to try and get out of this purgatory. And I was going to talk about this yesterday, but, quarterbacks kind of were a lot of what we talked about. So the Colts are trying to get over the hump of these 8-9, 9-8 seasons, very much like former Indiana head basketball coach Mike Woodson, who tried to get over the hump for his entire career. Here we go.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo! Hump day!
No, as a coach, I gotta get us over that hump. I gotta get them comfortable, knowing that you're gonna be in close games and you gotta make plays coming down the home stretch. I mean, in the tournament, we were right there. I just didn't get them over the hump, man. And that's something that I live with every day of my life. Because I truly believe that was the team to really make some noise and get to the finals, and I just couldn't get them over the hump.
Mike Woodson right there. Usually we do this on Wednesdays, over the hump day. To be fair, today is Thursday, so we are over the hump. So we're going to make a slight exception and do this today. Can the Colts get over that 8-9, 9-8 hump? And in the last, 8 seasons, the entire Chris Ballard era, the Colts have gone 8-9, 9-8, 4-12, 9-8, 11-5, 7-9, 10-6, and then 4-12 in his first year as the Indianapolis Colts general manager. That gives him a record of 62-69. The Colts have won 47% of their games during Chris Ballard's time in Indianapolis. And, that's not good. That's under 500 over the last 8 seasons. How do they get over this hump? Because this team is just mediocre year after year after year. They've gone 8-9, 9-8, or 7-9 in 4 out of the 8 seasons that Chris Ballard has been the general manager. And the easy, obvious answer is, of course, that the quarterback play has to be better. Oh, if Anthony Richardson can just develop, if Daniel Jones can just figure it out, then, they'll be good. Clearly, that's obviously true. But there are teams in the NFL who are good without elite quarterback play. Jalen Hurts just won a Super Bowl. He's a good quarterback, but he's not a part of that, elite tier of the Lamar Jacksons and Josh Allens and Joe Burrows and Patrick Mahomeses. He's not that. He's really good, but he's not that level. The Lions have won a bunch of games these last couple of years with Jared Goff as their starting quarterback. The Minnesota Vikings last year won a tough division with Sam Darnold as their quarterback. So you can win football games even if you don't have an elite quarterback. And when you look at the Colts, if they want to do that, because that's what they're going to have to do this year, they are not going to have an elite quarterback who can bail them out of these tough spots. The other things have to be better than what they are. That's the reality of it. And when you look at the Colts and you look at the trajectory of this team, it's not great because the quarterback situation isn't great. But let's look at everything else. To Chris Ballard's credit, his defense, the defense, is moving in the correct direction. They let EJ Speed go. They're probably going to take Jahad Campbell with the 14th overall pick. They're likely, going to be better on defense this year because they fired Gus Bradley. They hired Lou Anarumo. Cam Bynum and, Travarius Ward are both upgrades that the secondary so desperately needed. And you look at the rest of this defense, and it's like if some of these young pass rushers can improve, if they can take the leap, as some people like to say, then this Colts defense could actually be pretty elite. If Leatu Latu comes back and he's a 12-sack guy this year, and Kwity Paye can go from like 8.5 sacks to 10, and if Abukum comes back from tearing his Achilles, and I don't think he's going to have 9.5 sacks like he did 2 years ago, but if he can be like a 7 or 8 sack guy, if DeForest Buckner can continue to be a solid presence there in the middle of that defense, then we can look up and be like, wow, like this Colts defense is pretty good. So I'm not entirely concerned about the defense in terms of the Colts winning games this year. I am much more concerned about the offense. Because when you look at the offense, I mean, they need more playmakers. They don't have enough of them. The Eagles, who won the Super Bowl this year, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. That's 3 pretty good weapons. You look at the Lions, just 2 beasts of running backs in the backfield between Montgomery and Gibbs. And then you look at Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. You look at the Vikings, Aaron Jones playing running back, Justin Jefferson, Addison as the other wide receiver, T.J. Hawkinson as the starting tight end, all helping elevate Sam Darnold and the rest of that Minnesota Vikings offense. And when you look at the Colts, like, some random guy at tight end that they pulled off the street 4 hours before the game, Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, and Jonathan Taylor. Like that's just not good enough. If Patrick Mahomes is your starting quarterback, then that's fine. You can totally get away with that. But if it's Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, that's just not enough playmakers. Tight end by committee is 1,000% in play again for the Colts this year. They'll probably draft one, but it's not going to be Tyler Warren. And if they opt for a linebacker at 14 instead of Colston Loveland, then I don't know. Sure, Mason Taylor might end up being good, but he's going to be as good as one of those 2 guys and be, an instant impact guy? Probably not. And we all know how Chris Ballard works. Like it would be the total Chris Ballard move to take a really good linebacker as opposed to a great tight end because he can get a good tight end in the second round. That is the Chris Ballard way. So will they be able to add the playmakers that they need? Because they just don't have them. Alec Pierce was good last year. That guy's a one-trick pony. He caught a bunch of deep balls. It's really all that he did well last year. Josh Downs primarily works underneath, a nice slot receiver. I think he's got a little more to his game than what we've seen from him just because of the limitations of the quarterbacks that he's been playing for. Michael Pittman Jr. is a really nice possession receiver. And it's, just the most Colts, the most Chris Ballard thing ever, that we're in this era in the NFL where wide receivers are just everywhere. Like it's never been easier to find a great wide receiver, and the Colts don't have one. They don't. And this is why I'm going to be very tuned in to the A.D. Mitchell improvement throughout, the years or throughout the offseason. He runs a 4.3. Those, advanced stats say that, he gets open. He's big. He's like 6'2", probably needs to put a little bit of weight on as well. But he has a ton of talent. He didn't show it last year. But he's a guy who could potentially really elevate this Colts offense. And if you draft Loveland at 14 and A.D. Mitchell becomes a guy who can consistently play snaps, and when he plays those snaps, you actually throw him the football instead of having him throw the football, then this Colts offense could improve a little bit. But that has to happen. And it feels like this is what we say about the Colts every single year. Hey, the Colts took this guy with the 12th pick, and he's got all the talent in the world. We just need him to produce. That's what it feels like we say about all of these Chris Ballard draft picks every single year. And if the Colts want to avoid, once again, being a 500 team, then those guys have to start producing. It has to start happening at some point. And if it doesn't, then the Colts are going to continue to be 8-9 or 9-8. And Chris Ballard will he'll probably keep his job because Jim Irsay doesn't seem to fire anyone anymore. Speaking of, high draft picks developing, the Pacers won last night. Jarris Walker led them in plus-minus. Tyrese Halliburton was still the best player on the floor for the Pacers, but Jarris Walker, he's coming along strong. My thoughts on the Pacers win over the Hornets last night and Jarris Walker's continued improvement.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe, watch the show there, hop in the chat, be part of the conversation. You can also watch the show on Twitter or X, __ Jonathan Smith, if you want to follow me there, at Ticket 1430. If you want to follow the station for all the updates on my show and the Dan Dockett Show, which is on from noon to 3 today. You can also listen to me, that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And if you want more from me, you can also check out my other YouTube page, My Take Is. Now, the Pacers rolling, still holding on to that 4th seed net. They now have a 3-game lead over the Detroit Pistons after their loss last night to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have a 3.5 game lead over the Milwaukee Bucks, who are going to play against the Philadelphia 76ers tonight. Obviously, if they win that game, then both them and the Detroit Pistons will be tied in record-wise for that 5th seed. I don't know how, or the Bucks currently hold the tiebreaker in that, but the Bucks will play the Detroit Pistons in their final 2 games of the year, and hopefully those 2 games really matter, because we want those teams as worn down as possible when one of them inevitably winds up playing against the Indiana Pacers at some point. Now, Pacers last night beat the Hornets 119 to 105, and Tyrese Halliburton played an excellent game, 22 points, 10 assists, 0 turnovers. The Pacers are now 22-3 when Tyrese Halliburton scores 20 points or more. And what we saw from Tyrese Halliburton last night can only be described as the perfect Tyrese Halliburton game. He scored from all over the floor, broke the paint several times, found his teammates, had 10 assists, 0 turnovers. And I mainly want to focus on the scoring, because everyone is fully aware at this point of, the elite playmaking that Tyrese Halliburton does literally every single night. And the scoring, like that is the frustrating part with watching Tyrese Halliburton play sometimes, because he isn't always aggressive. He's not always looking to score, and it's frustrating because he's very talented in terms of his scoring ability. Last night, he goes 4 of 6 from 3. He hit 1 of his 4 mid-range jump shots. That's not normal for him. Usually he's much better from that mid-range area, especially on those little dribble pull-ups. And he was 4 of 5 shooting from inside the paint. That is a great game from him. He takes 15 shots. They're spread out all over the floor. And that is what leads to him having his best game. So he'll have games sometimes where he takes, 15 shots, but 11 of them are threes. And, look, you hit 8 of them, then, great night. You keep firing them. But that usually doesn't happen. The games where he's getting into, all 3 levels of scoring, that is when he's at his best, because that means he's aggressive. That means he's really looking for his shot. And when he's looking for a shot, it makes it easier for him to create for his teammates. Once again, 10 assists last night, 0 turnovers. And he was able to get his teammates involved and have 10 assists last night because he consistently got into the paint. That is the money area for him, because, he's a really good finisher at the rim. He's able to kick out to 3-point shooters. If guys over help, he's able to throw that little lob over the top to, Miles Turner or Thomas Bryant or whoever's playing kind of in that dunker spot. And he did that all last night. And he just keeps piling up the assists and limiting the turnovers. Since March 1st, he now has 133 assists and only 15 turnovers. That is an assist-to-turnover ratio of 9-1. Also, a third of those turnovers came in one game. He just continues to be on this incredible tear. He's going to be on an all-NBA team again this year. Part of that is because some guys have gotten hurt. They're not going to hit that 65-game threshold. And this, tear he's been on since that All-Star break is going to get him, on third team all NBA once again. He's been nothing short of incredible this year. Now, in terms of the game itself last night, Pacers look good. Won by 14. Pretty impressive. Although the game was close at times, like they weren't great offensively, they still controlled that game really from start to finish. Like there was never a moment where I was like, are the Pacers going to blow this? Never. And they won that game with defense. They held the Hornets to 105 points. They forced 18 turnovers. That's insane. NBA teams do not turn the basketball over 18 times in one game. It does not happen, yet the Pacers were able to force 18 turnovers. It's a large part of why they won by 14. And I know that the Hornets sat a bunch of guys because they were tanking. With that being said, that has not stopped the Pacers from struggling and losing to bad teams before. Do you remember that game against the 76ers, like probably 3 weeks to a month ago, where, you know, it's like Quentin Grimes taking 20 shots and the Pacers were in like a legitimate dogfight for most of that game. They ended up winning by, I think like 8. They pulled away late. Last night, though, no issues. It's impressive. It was a good performance from them in that capacity. They're going to have, another opportunity to beat a bad team tomorrow night when they host the Utah Jazz, who are going to do the exact same thing that the Hornets are doing. They're going to say that some guy's sick, even though he isn't. And the Pacers should hopefully win that game by 20. And Jarris Walker should continue to play because he's been really good here as of late. And he was great last night. Trying not to get my hopes up, but Jarris Walker has put together back-to-back impressive performances. Last night, he played more minutes off the bench than any other Pacer that came off the bench. And he led the team in plus-minus at plus 22. Pacers only won by 14. That means that they were minus 8 when Jarris Walker was not on the floor. That is wildly impressive for a player that, has had some really bad stretches throughout this season. He's going to be a rotational piece for the Pacers in the playoffs if he continues to play the way that he has. He's big. He can rebound. He can guard. He's not an elite perimeter defender just yet, but he's definitely gotten better in that area. And he's shooting 39% from 3 on the season. This lineup where the Pacers will go small with him, Obi Toppin, and usually Pascal Siakam all on the floor. It's like you've got these 3 power forwards out there at once. It's a good lineup. The Pacers have had a lot of success with that lineup. Okay, he's a good player, Jarris Walker. He's been playing like one here as of late. He's not a star, but he was never really supposed to be that. I think people hear, he's the 8th overall pick and expect guys to like compete for MVPs, and that's just not the reality of the NBA. When you look at the best players in the league, a lot of them are taken within like the first 4 picks. Most of them. That's the reality of it. If you're taking 8th, sure, from time to time you'll have, like this a Paul George who was, a star there for a bit. Steph Curry was the 7th overall pick when he was drafted by the Warriors, but he wasn't supposed to be. I remember when the Timberwolves passed on him twice. Everyone was like, whoa, like that's weird. So he wasn't supposed to go 7th. He was supposed to go higher than what he did. And so the Pacers take Walker at 8th, and he's just supposed to be this, big wing defender that makes open threes, attacks closeouts, and, look, he's got some creation stuff that we haven't really gotten a chance to see him do because, Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam have the ball, as they should, right? So, and we've kind of seen Jarris Walker, we've seen him start to do these things. He's defending better. He's making open threes. He's doing a really good job attacking closeouts. He's not having these mental lapses that he's had before in the past. And he's become a real contributor to the Pacers and their success over the past couple of weeks to a point where, he should continue to get a lot of minutes in this rotation. Believe it or not, the 76ers just shut down Tyrese Maxey for the rest of the season. It just, it only gets worse for them, and it only makes me happier. Oh, man. Speaking of getting worse, the Purdue lost Camden Heide to The transfer portal, I was kind of surprised by this one. This is not good for Purdue. When it came to Miles Colvin leaving Purdue, I was like, plenty of 6'4" athletes who shoot 31% from three in the portal. There's plenty of them. Okay. Camden Heide, though, is a much bigger loss. He's a much tougher guy to replace because he's this 6'7" wing who's athletic. He can really shoot it and is produced and played good, important minutes in the NCAA tournament. This is a real legitimate loss for Purdue in a way that losing Miles Colvin was not. Because it's just harder to find 6'7" athletes who can really shoot the ball. And if you do find it, then there's, 5 other really good basketball teams bidding for that player. Also, with Miles Colvin leaving, and part of why it's not as big of a loss as Camden Heide is because you have these young freshman guards coming up behind Miles Colvin who can fill his role. Between CJ Cox and Jakari Harris, they should be fine in terms of depth at the guard position next year, and even the 2 years after that when those two guys become the main catalysts of the Purdue offense alongside Daniel Jacobson, if he sticks around after last year, because that dude's going to be really, really good. Whereas when you look at Purdue's roster, they don't have any other 6'7" athletes on their roster, period. They don't have anyone on their roster that can just kind of slide into that role that Camden Heide had. Now, his numbers weren't eye-popping. I think he averaged 5 points per game. But, he had some rough stretches, but he ended up shooting 39% from three on the year. And everyone who's seen him play for Purdue these last, 2 years, I think understands how important he is. Just, the size, his ability to really get in a stance and guard. His, athleticism allows him to block some shots coming over from the weak side. And once again, Purdue doesn't have anyone who can really fill that role. When you look at their roster from last year, they had, 3 guys on their roster listed at 6'6", 6'7", or 6'8". Camden Heide was the only one who played real minutes. Purdue has to fill this hole. And good news, you have the portal. You're going to have options of players to go out and bring in. I haven't looked. I don't even know if Purdue's bringing in any freshmen. I'm sure that they are. But, you can bring some freshmen in. The high school seniors become under-recruited more and more every single year. I mean, you heard Coach Patino at St. John's, a guy who's won a lot of basketball games, say, yeah, I don't recruit high school kids anymore. We're going to go get everyone in the portal because I'd rather have a 22-year-old who's played 3 years of college basketball and I know what he is than some freshman who I have no idea. It's the same thing with, free agency in the NFL. Would you either sign a great free agent or draft a guy? The answer is sign a great free agent because you know exactly what you're getting. It's becoming that way in college basketball as well. And so Purdue's going to have to go out. They're going to have to find someone who can kind of fill that Camden Heide-sized hole. And if they do, they're going to be a very popular pick to, go to the Final Four again. They're going to be a very popular pick to win the whole thing because this roster is just going to be loaded. Braden Smith, the second best point guard in all of college basketball this year behind Walter Clayton Jr. of Florida. He'll obviously be back. He'll be a senior. Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman-Wren, well, they're both going to be seniors. CJ Cox and Jakari Harris are both going to be sophomores. They should come back better players after just having a year of experience under their belts. Daniel Jacobson, big center, can shoot it, block shots, kind of fills a lot of the holes that Purdue had. They're bringing in the Oscar Clough dude from South Dakota State, who looks like a big old lumberjack with the beard and the size and all that good stuff. They're going to be very talented, but there is a hole on this roster right now. They need a legitimate wing who can shoot and play defense. They need both of those things. And because that's exactly what Camden Heide was, and he's leaving that hole. They also need a secondary ball handler, and I'm really hoping that CJ Cox or Jakari Harris come back better players, especially CJ. I really he had some really good moments this year where you just know that there's a little bit more offensively. I just don't think that they trusted him enough. And it may not even be that. It may just be a simple question of, would you rather give the ball to C.J. Cox or Braden Smith? And the answer is pretty clear. It's Braden Smith. So very intrigued to see what Purdue does in the portal going forward. Indiana, they got 3 guys on their roster as of right now. They're going to sign some other guys, and we'll talk about them as they continue to sign. Obviously, Connor Enright signing yesterday. Tough guy, really good passer, and shot 42% on catch and shoot threes last year. So we'll see. I'm very intrigued to see what Coach DeVries winds up putting together in the portal. Hopefully, the Indiana Hoosiers are a legitimate threat to win the Big Ten next year. We saw Dusty May turn it around really, really quickly at Michigan in year 1. Maybe and hopefully Coach DeVries can do the exact same thing. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to tune into the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be on the air for the next 3 hours with Dan Dockage, as well as the Dan Dockage Show gets rolling here in about 5 minutes. I'll be back on the air tomorrow as well from 10 to noon. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you subscribe to Indy Sports Ticket and my other YouTube channel, My Take Is, over on YouTube. I'll talk to you tomorrow starting at 10.